Princess Kalith stood in the center of the grand throne room, her hands locked in heavy suppression chains that dimmed her natural Varathian strength. The metal burned against her purple skin, a constant reminder of how far she had fallen. Around her, the Council of Scales sat in their elevated seats, their faces carved from stone and judgment. Her brother Vethros paced before the Emperor's throne, his voice dripping with false concern. "Father, she endangers our entire way of life. She speaks against traditions that have kept our empire strong for 10,000 years." Kalith lifted her chin. "I spoke against throwing living beings into certain death. I spoke against using the Ashfall Wastes as an execution ground for anyone who questions your authority, brother." The Emperor, her own father, looked older than she remembered. The weight of the crown seemed to press down on his shoulders. "Kalith, you were raised to understand our ways. The weak must be culled. The strong must prove themselves. This is how we have survived. This is how we have become monsters," she said quietly. The throne room erupted. Council members shouted, guards shifted their weapons, and Vethros smiled like a predator that had just cornered its prey. He had been planning this for months, she realized. Every word she had spoken in private councils, every reform she had suggested, every mercy she had shown to lower species, he had collected it all like ammunition. "The princess has condemned herself with her own words," Vethros declared. "She shows weakness. She questions the wisdom of our ancestors. There is only one punishment suitable for such heresy." The Emperor closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the father was gone. Only the ruler remained. "Princess Kalith, I hereby strip you of your title and rank. You are sentenced to exile in the Ashfall Wastes. May the Dretha dragons judge your worth." Guards grabbed her arms. Kalith didn't struggle as they dragged her toward the dimensional portal chamber. She caught one last glimpse of her father's face. Was that regret she saw? Or just the reflection of throne room lights? The portal chamber was deep beneath the palace, a place where reality bent and twisted. Ancient technology hummed in the walls, older than the empire itself. The guards stripped away her royal robes, leaving her in simple cloth that would burn away within minutes in the wastes. They checked her suppression chains one final time. "Any last words, princess?" one guard asked. He had been part of her personal security once. She saw shame in his eyes. "Tell my father that I forgive him," she said. "And tell my brother that I will see him again." The portal opened, a swirling vortex of heat and ash and screaming wind. Beyond it, she could see the red glow of lava flows and the twisted black stone of the Ashfall Wastes. The air that blasted through smelled of sulfur and burnt metal. They shoved her through. The transition felt like being torn apart and reassembled. Kalith crashed onto scorched stone that burned even through her clothing. The heat was overwhelming, pressing down on her from all sides. Rivers of molten lava flowed between jagged rocks, casting everything in hellish red light. Ash fell from the dark sky like poisoned snow. She struggled to her feet, chains rattling. The suppression field made her feel weak as a child. Her natural Varathian abilities, enhanced strength, rapid healing, environmental adaptation, all of it was locked away behind the chain's technology. That's when she heard the roar. It started low, a vibration in the stone beneath her feet, then built into a sound that shook her bones. She looked up and saw them, 3 Dretha dragons circling overhead. They were massive, each one the size of a small ship, with scales that gleamed like volcanic glass. Their wings blotted out the ash-filled sky. The smallest one, though still enormous, dove first. Its jaws opened wide enough to swallow her whole, filled with teeth like obsidian daggers. Fire built in its throat, a glow that promised instant incineration. Kalith closed her eyes. At least it would be quick. The explosion came from her left. A burst of force and sound that sent the dragon veering off course, roaring in surprise and anger. Kalith's eyes snapped open as something wrapped around her waist, a metal cable, humming with energy. "Hold on," a voice shouted in Galactic Common, but with an accent she didn't recognize. The cable retracted violently, yanking her across the burning stone. Her skin scraped against rock as she slid, chains clanging. Behind her, dragon fire scorched the ground where she had been standing, turning stone to bubbling glass. She tumbled into darkness, a cave entrance carved into the cliff face. Hands grabbed her, dragging her deeper as something heavy slammed down behind them, sealing the entrance. The roar of dragons became muffled, distant. Kalith lay on cold stone, gasping for breath. Her rescuer moved in the darkness, and lights flickered on, small crystalline formations that glowed with soft blue light. She saw him clearly for the first time. A human. Male, perhaps 30 cycles old by their short lifespans, with dark skin marked by scars and wearing armor that looked like it had been rebuilt a dozen times. His breathing was heavy, and he pulled off a battered helmet to reveal a face that was tired but alive with intensity. "Welcome to hell," Jack Taylor said, offering her a canteen of water. "Name's Jack. And before you ask, yeah, I'm human. Yeah, I know we're supposed to be primitive. And yeah, I just saved your royal ass from becoming dragon food." He grinned, and despite everything, despite the pain and fear and the knowledge that she had been abandoned to die, Kalith found herself staring in disbelief. She had been saved by a species her empire considered barely civilized. Kalith woke up on something soft, at least, softer than burning stone. Her eyes opened slowly, taking in the cave around her. It wasn't just a hole in the rock. This was a home. Rough shelves lined the walls, holding containers of water, dried foods, and tools she didn't recognize. Maps covered one section, marked with symbols and notes. A small fire burned in a contained pit, its smoke somehow venting through cracks above. Jack sat nearby, stirring something in a metal pot over the flames. He noticed her movement and glanced over. "Morning, princess. Or whatever time it is. Hard to tell down here." She sat up slowly, feeling her wrists. The suppression chains were gone. Her natural abilities tingled as they returned, not full strength yet, but coming back. "You removed my chains." "Yeah, with a plasma cutter and about 3 hours of careful work. Those things are nasty." He poured liquid into a cup and handed it to her. "It's safe. Filtered water from underground springs. Tastes like rocks, but it won't kill you." Kalith took the cup, studying him. Humans were supposed to be weak. Fragile. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and most species considered them barely worth noticing. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, short lifespans, and technology that was generations behind everyone else. Yet this one had survived in a place designed to kill. "How long have you been here?" she asked. 8 months, give or take. My research ship had a malfunction. Crashed about 20 miles north of here." He stirred his pot again. "Crew didn't make it. Just me. Spent the first week running and hiding like a scared rabbit. Spent the next month watching. Learning." "Learning what?" Jack smiled. "That dragons aren't mindless killing machines. They're apex predators with patterns, territories, and behaviors. Once you understand the pattern, you can survive." He pulled out a large piece of hide covered in sketches. "See, the big ones hunt in the morning, right after the lava flows cool enough for smaller creatures to come out. They patrol in groups of 3, always 3. The younger ones hunt at night because the adults chase them off the good feeding grounds. And here," he pointed to a section of his map, "this whole area is a neutral zone. Some kind of breeding ground. They don't hunt there." Kalith stared at the detailed observations. This wasn't the work of someone just trying to survive. This was research. Understanding. "My people have sent criminals here for thousands of years. None of this was ever recorded. Because they were too busy dying." Jack served himself some of the food he'd been cooking. "Your people treat this place like an execution. They throw someone in and assume the dragons will do the rest. But the dragons aren't executioners. They're just animals trying to live. If you approach them with violence, you get violence back. If you're smart about it, you can coexist." "Coexist?" "They tried to eat me. Because you appeared out of nowhere in the middle of their territory. You'd do the same if something suddenly appeared in your bedroom." He took a bite and winced. "God, I miss real food. Anyway, point is, survival here isn't about being stronger than the dragons. It's about being smarter." Over the following days, Jack taught her everything. He showed her the thermal vents that could hide body heat from dragon senses. The crystalline plants that grew near lava flows, their color changed 20 minutes before an eruption, giving warning time. The underground water sources that were safe versus the ones contaminated with minerals that would shut down your organs. He taught her to move during dragon sleep cycles. The big ones rested during the hottest part of the day when even they couldn't handle the surface heat. That gave a 4-hour window to travel, gather supplies, and scout new areas. "Your equipment is impressive for human technology," Kalith admitted as he showed her his collection of tools. Each one was modified, rebuilt, or completely improvised from crash salvage and local materials. "Necessity is the mother of invention," Jack said. "When you don't have backup, don't have superior strength, don't have natural armor, you learn to use what you've got. Human history is basically one long story of weak beings surviving through sheer stubborn creativity." She watched him work, his hands steady as he repaired a damaged sensor array using dragon scales as heat shields. There was something mesmerizing about his focus. He didn't have enhanced intelligence like the Kalati species. He didn't have the multi-layered thinking of the Zephyrins. He was just persistent. "Why did you save me?" she asked one evening as they sat watching the lava flows through a safe viewing crack. "You could have let me die. One less mouth to feed." Jack was quiet for a moment. "Back on Earth, we have this idea. Doesn't matter if you're strong or weak, rich or poor, human or alien. If you can help someone, you should. Simple as that." He glanced at her. "Besides, I've been alone for 8 months. Having someone to talk to is worth the extra food rationing." The next day, they faced their first real test together. A massive dragon migration began, hundreds of Dretha moving through the area on their way to breeding grounds. The cave entrance was directly in their path. "We can't fight them," Kalith said, her newly returned strength making her want to try anyway. "Fighting is losing." Jack was already moving, gathering supplies. "We redirect them. Come on." He led her through a series of tunnels she hadn't known existed, carrying strange devices he'd built. They emerged at several points along the migration route. At each location, Jack set up sound emitters that mimicked Dretha territorial calls, and heat generators that created false signatures of competing dragons. "We're not stopping them," he explained as they worked. "We're suggesting a better route. One that goes around us instead of through us." It worked. The migration shifted, flowing around their position like water around a stone. Hundreds of dragons passed within yards of them, close enough to feel the heat radiating from their scales, but none attacked. They were focused on the path ahead, responding to the false signals Jack had created. After it passed, Kalith sat down hard, adrenaline fading. "That was terrifying?" "Yeah. But we're alive." Jack grinned, and she found herself grinning back. "My people would have tried to fight them. Used weapons, shields, brute force. And they would have died. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is step aside and let nature do its thing." He started gathering his equipment. "That's what humans are good at. We're not the strongest or the fastest. We're the ones who watch, learn, and adapt. We survive because we think different." That night, as they ate a meal of roasted crystal tubers and some kind of protein Jack had trapped, Kalith made a decision. "Teach me everything. Every trick, every tactic, every observation you've made. I want to learn how humans survive." Jack raised his cup of filtered water in a mock toast. "Deal. But fair warning, my teaching style involves a lot of almost dying and last-minute saves." "I've noticed," she said dryly. He laughed, and the sound echoed warmly through the cave. For the first time since her exile, Kalith felt something other than despair. She felt hope. And it came from the most unlikely source in the galaxy, a human who refused to give up. 4 months had passed since Kalith's exile. She had changed in ways she never expected. Her hands, once soft from royal luxury, were now calloused from climbing rocks and building shelters. Her movements had become efficient, purposeful. She no longer flinched at dragon roars in the distance. Instead, she analyzed them, identifying species and distance like Jack had taught her. They were eating breakfast when Jack pulled out his datapad, studying a map covered in glowing markers. He'd been tracking something for weeks now, she knew. He would stare at the readings, make notes, then stare some more. "There's something out there," he finally said. "An energy signature that doesn't belong. I've been tracking it since month 2, but I couldn't risk the journey alone. Now though." He looked at her. "Think you're ready for a real expedition?" Kalith felt a thrill of excitement. "What kind of energy signature?" "The kind that's older than your empire. Older than mine. Maybe older than most civilizations in the galaxy." He zoomed in on the map. "It's deep in uncharted territory. 3 days' journey through some of the worst dragon zones. But if I'm right about what this is, it changes everything." They prepared carefully. Jack packed his most reliable equipment while Kalith gathered food and water. They moved out at dawn, using the early cool period when the big dragons were still sleeping off their night hunts. The journey was brutal. They crossed lava fields where the heat was so intense that even with Jack's reflective gear, they could only move in short sprints. They navigated through crystal forests where the ground could collapse into hidden magma pockets without warning. They hid from a hunting pack of adolescent dragons that tracked them for half a day before finally giving up. On the second night, sheltering in a natural cave formation, Kalith asked the question that had been bothering her. "Jack, what were you researching out here before your crash?" This wasn't exactly a vacation destination. He smiled tiredly. I was studying pre-galactic civilizations. The species that existed before the current order. Most academics think they all died out or evolved into modern races. But I had a theory that some of their technology might still be functioning in remote locations. He gestured around. Places like this, where no one wants to look. That's a long shot for a research mission. Yeah, well, humans are good at long shots. It's kind of our thing. He checked his datapad again. And right now, that long shot is paying off. The signal's getting stronger. By the third day, the landscape had changed. The volcanic activity decreased, replaced by something stranger. Black stone structures jutted from the ground, too precise to be natural, too weathered to be recent. Ancient architecture, half buried in centuries of ash and lava flow. Old Confederation, Kalith whispered, recognizing the style from her royal education. But these ruins are supposed to be myths. Stories to teach children about fallen empires. Myths usually start with something real. Jack moved forward, scanning everything. The question is what they left behind. The energy signature led them to a massive door set into a cliff face. It was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they looked at them. Kalith felt something deep in her chest, a pull, like the structure was calling to her. Jack ran his scanner over the entrance. It's active. Still powered after thousands of years. The security system is scanning us right now, analyzing biological signatures, technological level, probably a dozen other factors we can't even detect. Should we be worried? Too late for that. He grinned, that reckless human expression she'd learned meant he was about to do something dangerous. Besides, we came all this way. Might as well knock. He placed his hand on the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols flared with light, and Kalith felt a pulse of energy wash over her. The door split down the middle, ancient mechanisms groaning to life, and opened to reveal a corridor bathed in soft blue light. They stepped inside, and the temperature immediately dropped to something comfortable. The air tasted clean, recycled through systems that had been running since before Kalith's ancestors had learned to build ships. The walls were lined with more of those shifting symbols, and periodically they would pass chambers filled with technology that neither of them could identify. This is incredible, Kalith breathed. This is a complete old Confederation facility. Do you know what my people would pay for access to this? Let's see what it actually does before we start selling tickets. Jack led the way deeper, following his scanner's signal to what appeared to be a central chamber. The room was massive, circular, with a platform in the center. As they stepped onto it, holographic displays materialized around them. And then a voice spoke, ancient, measured, carrying the weight of millennia. Welcome, candidates. You have reached the archive of proving. Please state your purpose. Jack and Kalith exchanged glances. He stepped forward. We're explorers. Researchers. We tracked your energy signature here. Scanning, the voice said. Light washed over them both. Species identified. Human. Varathian. Accessing trial records. Holographic images burst to life around them, showing the history of the facility. Kalith watched in growing horror as the truth unfolded. The Ashfall Wastes weren't a natural hellscape. They were designed. Created by the old Confederation as a testing ground for species attempting to join the greater galactic community. The Dreetha weren't monsters. They were guardians. Engineered to challenge those who entered, to test their problem-solving abilities, their capacity for observation and adaptation. Species that approached with pure violence were destroyed. Species that learned, that adapted, that cooperated with the environment rather than dominating it, they passed. Your Varathian Empire has used this facility for execution purposes for 3,000 years, the AI stated. In that time, 7,422 individuals have been sent here. 0 have passed the trial. 0 have accessed this archive. Jack let out a low whistle. Because they were all trying to fight their way out instead of learning the patterns. Correct, human Jack Taylor. You are the first being in 10,000 years to pass the trial through pure adaptive observation. Your methods align with the intended purpose of this facility. Holographic displays shifted, showing technology that made even Kalith's royal education seem primitive. Gate systems that could connect any 2 points in space. Terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into paradises. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries. Weapons that could crack planets or defend entire solar systems. All of this is available to those who pass the trial, the AI continued. This technology represents the accumulated knowledge of the old Confederation. It was meant to be claimed by species worthy of using it wisely. Jack stared at it all, and Caliph could see the calculation in his eyes. This technology could elevate humanity from a minor species to a galactic power overnight. It could give Earth advantages that would take other civilizations millennia to develop. But then he turned to her. "What do you think?" Caliph blinked. "What do I think? Jack, this is your discovery. You passed the trial. This technology is yours to claim." "Maybe. But we survived together. We learned together. And honestly..." He looked at the displays showing weapons and power. "I don't think grabbing all this for myself is what passing the trial actually means. The AI said it's about wisdom, not just survival." Caliph felt something shift in her chest. This human, who could claim godlike technology for his species, was asking her opinion. Treating her as an equal partner. "Then here's what I propose," she said slowly. "We work together. You help me reclaim my throne and reform my empire. Teach my people what you learned here, that strength isn't everything. In return, I sponsor humanity's integration into the galactic community. Not as subjects or junior partners, but as equals. Full voting rights, technology sharing, diplomatic recognition." Jack extended his hand. "Deal." She took it, and their hands clasped in the human custom of agreement. The AI seemed to hum with approval. This response demonstrates the wisdom the trial was designed to identify. Access granted to both candidates. Joint custody of archive knowledge approved. Warning: claiming this facility will draw attention from galactic powers who benefit from the current order. Prepare accordingly. Caliph smiled. "Let them come. We survived dragons. We can handle politicians." Jack laughed. "Now you're thinking like a human." The imperial city of Vorath Prime had never seen anything like it. A ship descended through the atmosphere, broadcasting royal codes that hadn't been used in 6 months. Codes that belonged to a dead princess. Guard towers scrambled to respond. Traffic control operators stared at their screens in confusion. And in the Grand Palace, Crown Prince Vethros dropped the ceremonial cup he'd been holding, wine spreading across the marble floor like blood. "That's impossible," he whispered. The ship landed in the royal courtyard, and the loading ramp descended with a hiss of hydraulics. Caliph emerged first, dressed not in royal finery but in practical armor marked with scorch marks and wear. Her hair was tied back simply. Her eyes held a hardness that hadn't been there before. Behind her came Jack, wearing a modified environmental suit that looked cobbled together but somehow projected confidence. And behind them both, 3 juvenile Dretha dragons walked calmly down the ramp, their scales gleaming in the sunlight. The courtyard erupted in chaos. Guards raised weapons. Nobles screamed and fled. Servants dropped trays and scrambled for cover. Dragons were monsters. Death incarnate. Yet these 3 moved like trained companions, responding to subtle gestures from Caliph. The Emperor himself appeared on the grand balcony, flanked by Vethros and the full Council of Scales. His face had gone pale. "Caliph." "Hello, Father." Her voice carried across the courtyard, amplified by technology Jack had modified from old Confederation designs. "I've returned. And I've brought evidence of crimes committed in your name." Vethros recovered quickly, stepping forward. "This is a trick. An imposter using my sister's codes. Guards, arrest." "Arrest me?" Caliph's laugh was sharp. "Brother, I'm giving you a chance to surrender peacefully. Don't waste it." Jack tapped something on his wrist device. Holographic displays burst to life across the courtyard, visible to everyone. Financial records. Communication logs. Video evidence. 6 months of corruption, laid bare for all to see. Vethros had been selling exile rights to political rivals. 23 nobles had paid him to have their enemies thrown to the dragons. He'd covered up military failures that cost thousands of lives. Embezzled enough funds to buy a small fleet. And all of it was documented, time-stamped, verified. "Where did you get this?" Vethros snarled. "Our systems are secure." "Your systems were secure," Jack said pleasantly. Then they met human cybersecurity experts. "Well, one expert. Me. I've had access to your network since we entered orbit. Your firewalls are impressive. Just not impressive enough." The council members were talking frantically among themselves. Some looked outraged at the corruption. Others looked worried, probably wondering if their own secrets had been uncovered. The Emperor's face had gone from pale to stone still. "This requires formal judgment," he finally said. Kalith, you have accused your brother of high crimes. He has the right to challenge. Do you accept trial by combat? Kalith smiled. I do. And I choose Jack Taylor as my champion. The courtyard went silent. Then someone laughed. Then more joined in. A human? As champion? Humans were barely stronger than children. They had no natural weapons, no enhanced abilities. This was suicide. Vethros's smile was vicious. I accept. And I choose war champion Korvax. A ripple went through the crowd. Korvax was a legend. 7 feet of muscle and battle-scarred armor. Veteran of 100 worlds. He'd never lost a formal combat. Ever. The arena filled within the hour. It seemed like the entire city wanted to watch the spectacle. Kalith stood in the preparation chamber with Jack, helping him check his equipment one final time. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I could fight him myself. And prove what? That Varathians can beat Varathians. Jack secured the last strap on his exosuit. No. This needs to show something different. That there's more than one way to be strong. The arena floor was traditional, flat stone, no obstacles, nowhere to hide. Pure combat. Korvax entered from one side, his armor gleaming, carrying weapons that could punch through ship hulls. The crowd roared approval. Jack entered from the other side. Smaller. Lighter. Armed with nothing but his modified exosuit and what looked like basic equipment. The crowd's roar turned to confused murmuring. The judge, an ancient council member, raised his hand. Combat begins at the bell. It ends when one champion yields or falls. Let the judgment commence. The bell rang. Korvax charged immediately, covering the distance with frightening speed. His first strike would have ended most fights, a devastating overhead blow that cracked the stone where Jack had been standing. But Jack wasn't there. He'd rolled aside, using the exosuit's power assist to move faster than his human body alone could manage. Korvax's second strike missed. His third. His fourth. Jack wasn't fighting. He was studying. Watching. Learning the patterns like he'd learned dragon behavior. Stand and fight, human. Korvax roared, frustration building. Why? You're doing great on your own. Jack dodged another strike, and the crowd noticed something. Korvax was breathing harder. The heavy armor, the powerful swings, the constant movement, it was exhausting. Jack, meanwhile, was conserving energy. Making minimal movements. Letting Korvax tire himself out. When Korvax tried a particularly aggressive combo, Jack finally acted. He didn't block, he redirected, using the champion's own momentum to send him stumbling. Before Korvax could recover, Jack deployed small devices around the arena floor. What are those? Someone in the crowd asked. The devices activated. Electromagnetic pulses, carefully calibrated. Korvax's advanced armor, all its power systems and enhancements, suddenly locked up. Servos froze. Power assist failed. The champion was trapped inside several hundred pounds of dead weight. Jack stood at a safe distance. You can yield now. I designed those specifically not to hurt you. Just to stop you. Korvax struggled, but the armor wouldn't budge. His face went from rage to confusion to, finally, grudging respect. How did you know our armor's frequency? I've had access to your military databases for 3 hours. I know everything about your equipment. Jack walked closer. You're a great warrior, Korvax. But you relied on your tools and strength. When those were taken away, you had no backup plan. Humans always have backup plans. The champion tested his armor one more time, then laughed, a sound like grinding boulders. I yield. The human wins. The arena fell silent. Then one person clapped. Then another. Then the whole crowd erupted. They'd expected a slaughter. Instead, they'd witnessed something they'd never seen, a human defeating their greatest warrior through pure intelligence. Jack helped Korvax out of the locked armor, and the two shook hands, a gesture that confused many Varathians but felt right. The Emperor stood, and the crowd quieted. He looked old, tired, but also somehow relieved. Kalith, daughter, you have proven your claims. Vethros, you are stripped of rank and title. The evidence against you will be reviewed, and punishment will follow. Guards moved to arrest Vethros, who looked like he might fight. Then he saw the 3 dragons watching him calmly and thought better of it. The Emperor continued. Kalith, I name you Crown Princess once more. And your companion, Jack Taylor, is granted the rank of Royal Advisor and Ambassador of Humanity. Kalith bowed. Jack just nodded, which made some nobles gasp at the informality. But the emperor smiled slightly. That night, standing on the palace balcony overlooking the city, Caliph found Jack watching the stars. "You could have killed him," she said. "The crowd would have loved it. Killing him wouldn't have taught anyone anything. Beating him without violence? That teaches a lesson that might actually stick." He glanced at her. "Your empire needs to learn that power isn't everything." This was just the opening argument. She smiled. "Then let's make sure they hear the rest." Below them, the city that had condemned her to death now celebrated her return. And beside her stood a human who had changed everything by simply refusing to give up. The real work was about to begin. The first year of Calitha's reign was nothing short of revolutionary. The morning after her coronation, she stood before the assembled Council of Scales and announced changes that made half of them choke on their ceremonial wine. "The ashfall wastes will no longer be used for executions," she declared. "Effective immediately, it becomes a diplomatic proving ground. Any species wishing to join our empire in full partnership must send representatives to learn what we should have learned centuries ago, that cooperation beats domination." Council member Thexnor stood, his scales bristling. "Your Majesty, this is madness. We cannot treat lesser species as equals. It goes against everything." "Everything that was wrong with us," Calith interrupted. "Sit down, Thexnor. Or join my brother in exile." Vethros had been sent to a research colony on the edge of Empire space. No servants, no luxury, just a basic habitat and a requirement to contribute scientific work to earn his keep. Some called it mercy. Jack called it poetic justice. Either way, the former prince was learning what it meant to survive on intelligence rather than privilege. Jack stood beside Calitha's throne, looking uncomfortable in formal advisor robes but refusing to wear them traditionally. He'd modified them for practicality, adding pockets and tool loops, which scandalized the nobles and delighted the younger generation. "Let's talk about the council itself," Jack said, pulling up holographic data. "Right now, you have 12 members, all Varathian, all from noble families. I propose we expand to 24 members, with the new seats going to representatives from other species in your empire." The council erupted. "Outrageous. Impossible. They're not qualified." Jack waited for the noise to die down. "Not qualified? The Mindari have been part of your empire for 200 years and invented the energy shielding your ships use. The Kelthans developed your medical technology. The Prax built your communication networks. They're qualified. You just never asked them to lead." "And if they refuse these positions?" asked Council Member Velshaw, one of the few who seemed genuinely curious rather than outraged. "Then we find others who won't. Change is coming either way. You can be part of it, or you can be left behind." Jack's tone was matter-of-fact, not threatening. Somehow that made it more powerful. Over the following months, the transformation accelerated. The new council members brought fresh perspectives that shocked the old guard. A Mindari representative proposed educational reforms that would teach critical thinking alongside traditional subjects. A Kelthan member suggested medical care should be available to all citizens, not just those who could afford it. A Prax engineer revolutionized infrastructure planning by actually asking workers what they needed. And then there was the Dretha. Dr. Ren Halsey, a human xenobiologist who'd arrived with Earth's first diplomatic delegation, made a discovery that changed everything. The Dretha weren't just intelligent animals, they were fully sentient. They had language, culture, and society. The Varathian Empire had been treating thinking beings as mindless monsters for thousands of years. How did we miss this? Calith asked, staring at the translation matrices Ren had developed. "Because you never tried to communicate," Ren said simply. She was a small woman with gray hair and an endless supply of patience. "You saw them as threats, so that's all they became." Classic self-fulfilling prophecy. With translation established, negotiations began. The Dretha had been fulfilling their role as guardians of the old Confederation facility, but they'd grown tired of their purpose being perverted into executions. They agreed to a partnership. They would help terraform damaged worlds across the Empire, using their natural abilities to work in extreme environments. In return, they'd receive protected territories and full citizenship rights. The first joint Varathian Dretha terraforming project was on a world called Keshva, a planet stripped of resources by careless mining. Within 6 months, using old Confederation technology combined with Dretha environmental manipulation, the dead world began showing signs of life. Trees grew. Water flowed. The images broadcast across the Empire showed what cooperation could achieve. But not everyone was happy. The old noble families saw their power slipping away. Military hardliners believed the empire was becoming soft. And then there were the external threats, other galactic powers who didn't appreciate the Varathian Empire suddenly becoming more progressive and technologically advanced. The Zeskaran hierarchy sent a fleet to investigate the rumors of old Confederation technology. They arrived expecting to intimidate a weakened empire. Instead, they found Jack waiting with a demonstration. He'd taken one of the old Confederation gate systems and modified it for defense. When the Zeskaran ships refused to leave after diplomatic requests, Jack activated the gate. It opened directly in front of their fleet, and on the other side was the heart of a sun. The heat pulse alone sent the Zeskaran ships scrambling backward. Jack closed the gate and opened a communication channel. That was a warning shot. The next gate opens inside your ships. Leave peacefully, or leave in pieces. Your choice. They left. Peacefully. Very quickly. The demonstration went viral across the galactic networks. The Varathian Empire, once known for brute force, was now showing a different kind of strength. Smart strength. Human strength. Earth benefited enormously from the partnership. Technology flowed to human worlds, but more importantly, so did opportunity. Human advisors spread across the empire, not because they were physically superior or technologically advanced, but because they thought differently. They saw solutions where others saw problems. They found ways around obstacles that seemed impossible. A young human named Tyler Brooks revolutionized empire food production by introducing crop rotation concepts from Earth agriculture. An engineer named Rachel Kim redesigned ship engines to be 30% more efficient using principles from human automotive history. A teacher named Ben Foster created educational programs that helped Varathian children understand other species better. Humans became known as the problem solvers. The adapters. The ones who never gave up. The old Confederation facility became the Archive University, jointly operated by multiple species. Students came from across the empire to study not just ancient technology, but the philosophies behind it. Why the old Confederation had built the testing ground. What they had valued. What they had hoped future civilizations would become. Jack taught a class there every month, always packed with students. His lessons weren't about technology or tactics. They were about observation, patience, and the courage to try something different. 1 year after Kalitha's return, she stood before the gathered galactic community at the Grand Assembly on Neutral Station Concordia. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber. She wore her crown but carried herself like the survivor she'd become. My people made a mistake that lasted centuries, she began. We believed strength alone made us worthy. We measured civilizations by their capacity to destroy rather than their capacity to build. We were wrong. She gestured, and Jack stepped forward with one of the juvenile Dretha, now almost fully grown, moving beside him like a partner. This is what we learned in the place designed to kill us. That true strength comes from understanding. That power means nothing without wisdom. That the smallest voice might carry the greatest truth. She looked directly at the human delegation. We learned this from a species we once dismissed as primitive. A species that survived through adaptation, innovation, and refusal to quit. The human ambassador, an older woman named Patricia Chen, nodded acknowledgement. The Varathian Empire enters a new age, Kalith continued. We invite all species to join us not as subjects, but as partners. We will share what we've learned, and we ask that you share with us. Together, we can build something the old Confederation would recognize, a galaxy united not by conquest, but by cooperation. The vote took 3 hours. When it finished, 12 more species had joined the Empire's new structure, and another 30 had opened diplomatic channels. The isolationist factions were furious. The progressive ones were celebrating. Change was messy, but it was happening. That evening, Kalith found Jack on the observation deck, watching ships come and go from the station. Having second thoughts, she asked. About which part? Overthrowing an ancient empire's entire social structure, or becoming the most famous human in the galaxy? He smiled. Nah. Just wondering what my research advisor would say if he could see this. I was supposed to be studying dead civilizations. Instead, I helped build a living one. You did more than that. You proved that humans belong here. Not as followers or subordinates, but as equals. Jack shrugged. We're just doing what we've always done. Surviving. Adapting. Making it up as we go. He looked at her. Though I have to admit, it's easier with a partner who happens to be an empress. She laughed. And it's easier being an empress with a partner who survived 8 months in hell through pure stubbornness. Below them, the station bustled with activity. Ships from a dozen species docked and departed. Traders, diplomats, students, and explorers, all moving through space that had once been divided by fear and prejudice. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still resistance, still those who clung to old ways. But change had begun. And it started because one human refused to see dragons as monsters, and one princess learned that being thrown into hell could forge you into something stronger than any crown could make you. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the ashfall wastes, in a cave that had once been a desperate shelter, a small plaque had been placed. It read simply, "Here, a human taught an empire how to survive. And an empire taught humanity it was never alone." The new age had begun.